The great chamber of the council was still, silent save for the hum of alien machinery. High-ranking officials of the Galactic Federation hovered in their seats, their eyes locked on the holographic screens. The galaxy was at war, and today's conflict was critical. A small, unknown ship had just decloaked in the midst of the battlefield. "This is impossible," muttered Garl, a veteran warlord of the Federation. His mandibles clacked in disbelief as he adjusted his view of the hologram, watching the tiny human ship drift across the battleground, easily avoiding the fire of advanced alien weaponry. The reports were clear. Humanity was extinct. Their species had been wiped out centuries ago, and this shouldn't be happening. "We need to destroy it," came a voice from the Council's left flank. It was Nidra, the Federation's tactical strategist. Her tone was sharp, but fear laced her words. "Now." The Council's projection flickered and a secondary image appeared, a closer scan of the human vessel. It was battered, old, almost a ghost of the ships that had once threatened the galaxy. But there was something about it. The way it moved. Calculated. Precise. Like it had been in this very situation thousands of times before. "Explain," Garl demanded, his eyes narrowing. "We've intercepted its communications," Nidra said, tapping a control panel. "The humans are requesting backup, and they are activating weapon systems we've never encountered before." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. "Impossible," Garl repeated, more to himself than to the others. He motioned for the scan to be enlarged, his alien eyes scanning the data. "This ship, it should be scrap. It's not even on our records, which is why this is concerning," Nidra responded. "We're facing a ghost." Garl clenched his fists. A ghost. The idea of an ancient, forgotten human vessel reappearing now, at the height of their war with the Valtorians, was unthinkable. The humans had been eradicated by a joint Federation-Valtorian assault years ago, or so they had believed. How did it evade detection? Garl growled. His eyes flickered to the Council's youngest member, Lurin. She was staring at the screen, her face pale. "This vessel is emitting no detectable heat signature," Lurin whispered, her voice trembling. "Nothing, it's almost like it's cloaked." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "Cloaking technology is forbidden," Nidra said, her voice cold with rage. "The humans would never—" "No," Garl interrupted, his tone darkening. "They would. They were reckless, unpredictable. You all remember their history." The council chamber was filled with the low buzz of murmured conversations. But Garl's mind was already elsewhere. He had fought the humans, decades ago. Their ferocity, their unrelenting nature, it had always unsettled him. He had assumed they were gone, obliterated by the Valtorians, but this defied everything he knew about them. "Activate the countermeasures," Nidra ordered. "Shut it down before it does any damage. We don't need another Terrax." "Terrax was an anomaly," Garl snapped. "We need to understand what we're dealing with before we do anything." His words felt like a sharp jolt through the room. Silence followed, thick and heavy. They had all witnessed Terrax, the catastrophic destruction wrought by the human ship of the same name. It had decimated entire fleets with technology no one understood, leaving the galaxy with only questions and no answers. The ship on the hologram shifted again. It was so small, dwarfed by the enemy fleet, yet it moved with deadly precision, avoiding fire, sending out waves of electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the Federation's tactical systems. For a moment, Garl couldn't help but feel an eerie sense of déjà vu. The human ship was still out there, not gone, not forgotten. Nidra stood, her frustration palpable. "The human ship is surrounded. It will be destroyed in minutes. The Valtorians will finish it off. Let's focus on the real battle." "No," Garl muttered, his eyes locked on the ship, watching as it danced around the chaos, outmaneuvering. The Valtorian ships dodging their fire with impossible accuracy. "This isn't just a ship, it's a statement." He stood, his voice growing louder, more urgent. "You think we're fighting a fleet of Valtorians. You think the battle is already lost. But you don't understand. This ship, this human ship, it could turn the tide. It's not just part of the war, it's a declaration." A chill ran through the council as they realized the gravity of his words. The human ship was more than just a relic. It was a message to the galaxy, a promise that Earth was not gone. It was alive in ways they never expected. "You think it's a warning?" Lurin said softly, her eyes wide with realization. "A final message from a species that was thought extinct?" "Yes," Garl replied. "A message that Earth is still here, and it will not be forgotten." Nidra's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll finish it, like we did the others." "No." Garl snapped again, his voice cold with finality. "This time is different. We've underestimated them before. This ship isn't just a ship, it's humanity's last word. We need to be prepared for what comes next." Outside the council chamber, the battle raged on. The alien forces pushed forward, confident of their victory. But Garl knew that the true battle was just beginning, and that human ship still holding its ground was just the first signal of what was to come. As the council members exchanged nervous glances, Garl turned back to the hologram. The human ship, small and seemingly fragile, continued to evade its attackers. The galaxy might have shifted its borders that day, and no one, not even the Federation, could have predicted what would come next. With one final look at the ship, Garl knew this was only the beginning. The tension in the chamber hung thick like the impending storm of war that was unfolding across the galaxy. Garl stood motionless, watching the flickering hologram of the small human vessel as it navigated through the chaos. The alien forces, confident in their superiority, seemed unaware that they were facing something far more dangerous than a mere relic of the past. To the Federation it was a mistake, an oversight, but to Garl it was a wake-up call. Humanity wasn't gone. They had returned. His thoughts were interrupted by a sharp voice, Nidra's. "We can't keep watching this. If we wait any longer, it will be too late. The Valtorians are closing in. They'll finish it." Garl remained silent, his eyes glued to the flickering images of the battlefield. The human ship was small, and its design, old by the Federation's standards, made it appear outdated and easily dispensable. Yet it moved with the kind of precision and tactics that defied all expectations. He could sense the unease spreading throughout the council. This wasn't just a matter of warfare anymore. It was a matter of survival. "This ship," Garl muttered, his voice low but firm. "It's not just evading the enemy. It's playing them. It's a calculated move, a test." "A test?" Lurin asked, her voice edged with skepticism. "A test of what? Its abilities?" "Yes," Garl replied, turning to face her. "It's testing the boundaries, the limits of what the Federation and the Valtorians are willing to do. It's making them react, making them commit to a course of action that might just turn the tide of this war." Nidra scoffed, shaking her head. "This is absurd. A lone ship can't possibly change the course of the war." "You're wrong," Garl said, his voice growing sharper. "You don't understand the nature of the humans. They were always the wild card. They fought without rules, without hesitation, without care for their own destruction. That ship out there, it's not just a weapon, it's a statement. It's humanity's declaration that they are still here." For a moment, the council was silent, processing the weight of his words. No one had dared to believe the humans had survived. The Valtorians had made sure of that, wiping out their colonies, their fleets, everything. But here, in the heart of the galaxy, the impossible had happened. One ship had entered the battlefield, and it had shaken the foundations of everything the Federation and the Valtorians had worked for. The hum of the hologram continued as the human ship danced through the enemy fire, evading strike after strike, despite its apparent age and inferior design. It was almost as if it had a mind of its own, anticipating the movements of the enemy with eerie accuracy. Garl felt a knot form in his stomach. This wasn't just a ship, it was a warning. The humans were still out there, and they weren't just trying to survive. They were preparing to take back what was theirs. Suddenly, the council chamber's main communication console blinked to life, signaling an incoming message. Garl turned to the console, his eyes narrowing. The message was from the human ship, encrypted and undetectable to standard Federation systems. Only a few beings in the galaxy could have sent such a message, and Garl knew who it was. He'd seen it before, in the aftermath of the Terrax disaster. The humans had their own way of sending messages, their own technology, and they always knew how to make an entrance. "Play it," Garl ordered, his voice low but urgent. The hologram shifted, and a deep voice echoed through the chamber. "This is Captain Roderick Hayes of the human vessel Vanguard. To the Galactic Federation, and to any who think humanity is no longer a threat, we are not dead. We are not gone. We are coming back." The council fell into stunned silence as Hayes's words reverberated through the chamber. The message was brief, but it carried a weight that none of them could ignore. The captain's voice was calm, almost eerily so, despite the clear danger he was in. It was as if he knew, as if he was certain of victory. "We don't seek your mercy," Hayes continued. "We don't need your approval, but know this. The Vanguard is not alone, and the humans you thought were gone, we've been waiting, and now we're here." With that, the message ended, the console going dark. Garl stood motionless, staring at the now empty space where the human message had once been. His mind raced. What was the human fleet's plan? How had they survived? How had they managed to hide their presence for so long? Nidra broke the silence, her voice cold with disbelief. "This is madness. A single ship can't just claim the galaxy. We'll crush them before they even have a chance." "Not if they have more ships," Garl said, his voice grave. "And not if they have the technology to back them up." The council shifted uneasily, murmurs of concern spreading among them. Garl knew what they were thinking. How had the humans survived? How had they come back stronger and more dangerous than before? The questions flooded his mind, but one thing was certain. This was no longer just a war between the Federation and the Valtorians. This was a war for the galaxy itself, and humanity was no longer the underdog. "Send a fleet to intercept the human ship," Nidra ordered, her voice betraying her rising panic. "We'll end this before it becomes a problem." Garl shook his head. "You don't get it, Nidra. This isn't just a problem. This is the beginning of something much bigger. If we don't take this seriously, we're going to lose more than just this battle. We'll lose the entire galaxy." Lurin stood up, her face pale with realization. "You think they're planning something bigger? Something we can't even comprehend?" "Yes," Garl said, his voice grim. "The Vanguard is just the beginning. And I don't think we're ready for what comes next." The message from Captain Hayes was clear. Humanity had returned, and they were ready to fight for their place in the galaxy. The Federation, the Valtorians, and every other power in the galaxy had underestimated them once. Now they were about to learn the hard way that humans were not so easily forgotten. Outside the council chamber, the battle raged on, the Federation and the Valtorians locked in a deadly struggle. But inside the chamber, Garl knew that the true war had just begun. The galaxy's borders were shifting, and humanity's place among the stars was no longer in question. The Vanguard had made its mark, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As the council debated their next move, Garl felt a cold resolve settle within him. The time for underestimating humanity was over. The war had changed, and it would never be the same again. The war had escalated. As the Federation scrambled to comprehend the arrival of the Vanguard, the Valtorians, ever opportunistic, saw a new avenue of advantage. The arrival of the human ship, seemingly alone yet with a message far more powerful than any weapon, had thrown everything into chaos. Across the galaxy, battles continued to rage, but now, every faction was forced to reassess its strategy. For Garl and the rest of the Galactic Council, the immediate priority was clear. They needed to know more. They needed to know what humanity was capable of. Garl paced the length of the council chamber, his mind awash with thoughts. The humans had been gone for so long. The Federation and its allies had erased every trace of their existence. Or so they had thought. The Vanguard had pierced through the veil of silence they had created, and now it was time to understand the threat they had unleashed. "What if this is a trick?" Nidra asked, breaking the silence that had enveloped the room. She stood with her arms crossed, her expression one of frustration. What if the human ship is merely bait, a trap to lure us into a larger engagement? Garl stopped pacing and turned to face her. If it is Nidra, it's one we can't afford to ignore. His voice was low, almost menacing. The humans weren't known for tricks. They were known for making their enemies believe they had already won, only to strike when least expected. The thought of it unnerved him. The humans had always been unpredictable, capable of turning the tide of war with tactics that defied reason. It had been one of the reasons they had been wiped out in the first place. Their refusal to follow the rules of war, their brutal innovation, their refusal to surrender. The Valtorians had been relentless, and the Federation had assisted in ensuring humanity's extinction. But the Vanguard was a ghost, an echo of a past that had been buried. The human ship, Lurin whispered, her voice trembling. It's not alone, there's something out there, something watching us. Garl felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? Lurin didn't answer immediately, her eyes fixed on the display before them. She tapped her console, calling up a series of scans. There on the screen was a massive dark shape, larger than the human ship but moving slowly, deliberately, almost imperceptibly, through the dense debris of the battlefield. Unknown, she said. But it's not a Federation or Valtorian ship. I've never seen anything like it. It's cloaked. The human ship must be using some sort of signal to keep us from detecting it fully. But the size of it, the presence of it, it's not like anything we've ever encountered. Is it an enemy? Nidra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It's possible, Garl said, staring at the display. Or it could be the human fleet. They've been hiding for years. They could be behind that cloak. The implications of this theory hung heavy in the air. The humans weren't alone, and the Vanguard wasn't just a lone ship testing the waters, it was the spearhead of something much larger. But who else was with them? It's not just the humans we're dealing with anymore, Garl said, pacing again. This could be the beginning of an entirely new phase in this war. They've learned, and they've learned fast. We've underestimated them for too long. The room grew quiet, and Garl could sense the tension rising. The Federation had always been known for its technological superiority. They had eradicated humanity because they were seen as a threat, a primitive species that would never be able to challenge the might of the galaxy's dominant powers. But the human ship was proving them wrong. It wasn't the ship itself that caused the most fear. It was the quiet confidence with which it operated. It was the knowledge that the humans had not only survived, but were now watching, waiting for the right moment to strike back. How many of them are there? Lurin asked suddenly. How many ships did they have? We destroyed them all. Did we? Garl asked, his voice soft but full of meaning. Did we really destroy all of them? The question lingered unanswered. It was a question that haunted every member of the council. What if the humans had simply hidden? What if they had been waiting for the right moment to reassert their dominance? Get me everything you can on the human fleet, Garl commanded. Every scrap of data, every report, every whisper. There's something we're missing, I feel it. Lurin nodded, her fingers flying across her console. She pulled up old Federation files, classified ones, the ones only a few knew about. The ones that documented the humans' final days before the Valtorians had wiped them out. The ships, the colonies, the resistance movements, everything they had believed was gone, wiped out in a hail of destruction. It was supposed to be a clean slate. But now the question was whether they had really won, or if humanity had simply been lying in wait. Suddenly the display flickered. A new signal, a message, it was from the Vanguard. Garl, the voice on the other end crackled through the communication link. This is Captain Roderick Hayes again. You want to know how many ships we have? I'll tell you, we have enough. Enough to make you question everything you thought you knew about humanity. And we've only just begun. The message ended, leaving behind a trail of static. Garl's hand gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles turning white. There was no mistaking it now. The humans were no longer the underdogs, they were something far more dangerous. Something the Federation wasn't prepared for. Nidra turned to him, her eyes wide with disbelief. Did you hear that? He just threatened us. No, Garl replied, his voice calm but firm. He didn't threaten us. He gave us a promise. The message was clear. The Vanguard wasn't alone. And the humans weren't just surviving. They were building. They were preparing. The council fell into a deep silence. The implications of Hayes's words were profound. The humans had survived. They had gathered strength. And now they were ready to reclaim their place in the galaxy. "We need to act," Nidra said, her voice finally breaking the silence. "Before it's too late. We can't let them gain a foothold." "I agree," Garl said, his tone resolute. "But we need to understand what we're dealing with first. We need to find out who else is with them, who else is watching us." Lurin brought up another set of data. "It's coming from an unknown source," she said, her voice strained. "But I can't pinpoint it. It's like it's being masked." "Masking?" Garl asked. "How?" "Advanced cloaking technology. It's nothing like we've ever seen. It's like their ships are moving in and out of reality itself. We can't lock onto them." Garl stared at the screen, deep in thought. "The humans have been hiding for years. They've had time to develop new tech, new strategies. We can't afford to underestimate them. The war was no longer just about the Valtorians. It was no longer about the Federation's dominance or the tactical advantage they had held for so long. The arrival of the Vanguard had shifted the scales. The humans had returned and they had learned. They had changed. "What do we do now?" Nidra asked, her voice thick with uncertainty. Garl turned to face her, his eyes filled with a fire that had been absent for too long. "We prepare, we dig deeper, and we learn everything we can about the humans, their fleet, their technology, their tactics. Because if we don't, this war will be over before it even begins." The galaxy was shifting. Humanity was no longer extinct. And the Federation had just made the greatest mistake of all. They had underestimated them once again. The Vanguard had set the stage. And now humanity was ready to take the galaxy back. The council chamber was in turmoil. Garl stood at the center, watching the flickering holograms of the battlefield, his mind racing with the implications of what had unfolded. The Federation had made its move, trying to stifle humanity's resurgence before it could fully take root. Yet every effort to quell the Vanguard had failed. The human ship, seemingly alone, had outmaneuvered the might of both the Federation and the Valtorians, and now the battlefield was littered with the wreckage of those who had dared to underestimate. If the galaxy was changing, Garl couldn't help but feel the weight of it. The Vanguard had been the catalyst, the beginning of humanity's return to the stars. And the message had been clear. The humans were no longer the underdog. They weren't a forgotten species, lost to time. They were powerful, resourceful, and ready to take back what had been stolen from them. The Federation had failed to annihilate them, and now the galaxy was about to pay the price. Nidra was the first to break the silence. "They've destroyed our fleet. The Valtorians' forces are scattered. We've lost control of the battlefield." Garl's gaze remained fixed on the hologram, but his mind was elsewhere. "We never had control," he murmured. "Not really. The humans have always been able to twist the rules, to bend them to their will. They don't play by the same logic we do." The message from Captain Hayes echoed in his mind. "We have enough to make you question everything you thought you knew about humanity." It was no empty threat. The humans were now a formidable force, and they had learned from their mistakes. They had been watching, waiting. The Vanguard had been the spearhead, but there were more ships, more forces waiting in the shadows. Garl knew that the Federation was no longer the dominant power it once had been. The humans had reclaimed their place in the galaxy. "They've already begun to spread out," Lurin said, her voice trembling with realization. "Human ships are appearing in other sectors. Their fleets are growing." Garl's fists clenched at his sides. "We should have known. The humans don't just fight, they endure, they adapt, they rebuild. We underestimated them and now we're paying the price." Nidra's eyes flicked toward the display, her expression hardening. "What now? Do we surrender to them? Do we beg for mercy?" Garl turned to face her, his voice low but resolute. We don't surrender. We fight, but we do it on our terms. We need to understand their technology, their capabilities, and we need to understand why they've come back now. This isn't just a matter of war. It's a matter of survival. The silence that followed was thick with tension. They were no longer the dominant power. The galaxy had shifted. The Valtorians, once a force to be reckoned with, were now disorganized, fleeing from the advancing human ships. The Federation had no choice but to confront this new reality. Humanity was not dead, and they were not weak. We need to find out everything we can about their technology, Garl continued. Their cloaking systems, their weaponry, their tactics. We cannot fight them blindly. We need to know how they've managed to survive and why they're returning now. Nidra nodded, her expression hardening with determination. And if we can't find that information, what then? Then we prepare for the inevitable, Garl replied. We prepare for humanity's war. As the council members debated their next move, Garl felt an eerie sense of foreboding. The Vanguard had been a symbol, a rallying cry for humanity's return to power. But it was more than that. It was a wake-up call. The galaxy had been too complacent, too certain that the humans were gone, and now they were waking up to a new reality. Humanity wasn't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to dominate. The Federation had made a critical mistake by underestimating them, and now it was too late to turn back. The sound of a new message coming through interrupted Garl's thoughts. He turned, his eyes narrowing as he saw the encrypted communication. His instincts told him it was from the Vanguard. It had to be. Play it, he ordered. The image flickered, and once again Captain Hayes' voice filled the chamber. To the Galactic Federation and anyone else who might be listening, we told you we were coming, and now we're here. This is your final warning. We've rebuilt and we're stronger than ever. You thought we were gone. You thought you had wiped us out. But we've been watching, we've been waiting, and now we're taking back what's ours. This is your last chance to step aside. If you refuse, we will take it from you. The message cut off abruptly, and the room fell into stunned silence. There was no mistaking the tone of Hayes' words. The humans were not here to negotiate. They were here to reclaim their place in the galaxy. Garl felt his heart pound in his chest. This was it. The Federation could no longer hide behind its might. The galaxy had already shifted its borders, and the humans were at the forefront of that change. The silence in the room was broken by the hum of the communication console. Another message. Send it through, Garl ordered, his voice steady despite the rising tension. The new message came through, but this time, it wasn't from the Vanguard. It was from an unknown source, encrypted beyond the Federation's usual capabilities. Garl leaned forward, his fingers brushing against the console. He knew this was important. This message could change everything. The screen flickered and a new voice filled the room. This is Captain Alara of the Terran Fleet. We are here. The human species has not been forgotten. The galaxy is ours to claim. Stand down or face annihilation. Garl's breath caught in his throat. The voice was calm, cold, but filled with an undeniable sense of power. This was not just a threat. It was a declaration. The humans had returned, and they were no longer the hunted. They were the hunters. He turned to Nidra and Lurin. We've lost. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The Federation had spent centuries dominating the galaxy, wiping out entire civilizations, and now they were faced with the impossible truth. Humanity had returned, and they had come to reclaim what had been taken from them. The battle was over. The war had only just begun. In the distance, Garl could see the human ships, their fleets emerging from the shadows, ready to challenge the might of the Federation. The galaxy was no longer under Federation rule. The humans had shifted the borders, and there was no turning back. Garl's eyes hardened as he watched the approaching fleet. The Federation had made its final mistake. They had underestimated humanity. And now humanity was coming to take its place at the center of the galaxy.